Okay, so we can hear people coming online, and that's deeply exciting, as this is the, Gato featured at the AAATE conference last year in Bologna, but this is perhaps the first of many systematic engagements with the assistive technology community across the events that are held. I'm going to ask people to mute their microphones, if you would, please, because we're going to have a number of people coming online. So we just have a housekeeping slide here, which I'll go through before I hand over to our President, Luc de Wit, and our Secretary General, Evert-Jan Hogewerf. People will be muted. This is a free session, and after this session, the RESNA conference kicks off, and people who are RESNA delegates will be able to move swiftly in and hear the keynote that will be commencing at RESNA after we have finished our event here. Comments and questions welcomed in the chat box, and they'll be handled by Luc and Evert-Jan, I hope, as our conveners. Technical issues, well done people for coming online. There's my contact details, and I will be keeping an eye on the email and mobile to see if anybody needs support. It's probably worth just clarifying the plethora of events that are on. You are in the little round blob that says free Gato opening forum. You are here. This is related to, but not part of, the RESNA annual conference. You can see another blob there, which is the AT Outcome and Impact Summit. So that's a stream of 2 sets of 4 papers that's held within the RESNA conference. RESNA have been very supportive in letting Gato have an identity and have host those international papers, but to attend them you need to be a registrant for the RESNA conference. This is our agenda for today. Luc will set the scene. Roger will launch the Outcome and Impact Initiative, and then we're very proud to have Marcia Shearer and Roger deliver our plenary address. Luc, I will hand over to you to take us through this agenda, and just hold up your hand when you're ready for me to click through the slides.
Well, thank you very much, and also thank you for all the technical support, because you and your university allow us to have this event here, which is absolutely great. We just mentioned it in the small talks before the start. This is one of the, in a way, positive side effects of the current COVID crisis, because I cannot remember to have ever been in a meeting with so many people from so many different countries. The only example that comes up in my mind is the Great Summit in Geneva, but during our normal conferences, we are much more limited to our own regions, and I think that is fantastic. And that's also exactly what Gato wants to do. So welcome to you all. The numbers are still growing. Yesterday evening, the count was 150 people. I counted from 30 countries, from all continents except Antarctica, which is, yeah, I think great. We have a very large group from Argentina, which is, well, great. So yeah, thank you all for being here and for joining us in this session. It is the start, as Natasha already mentioned, of an interesting series of lectures as part of the RESNA conference. And I hope many of you will be able to attend that part as well. If you're not, all the papers you will hear and that will be presented will be made available today on the Gato website. You will find everything after the session. You can access all the papers that will be presented. But I hope you can join. I have the following slide. What I would like to do before we go really in depth is tell you a little bit about Gato. What are we, why did we take the initiative to establish Gato, and why do we have this event? just as an introduction to what's to come after that. So what is GAATO? GAATO is an association or an alliance, collaboration of representative assistive technology organizations across the world. So we all know, most of you will be member of a European or American or Japanese or whatever, Taiwanese organization in this field. And what GAATO is a collaboration, a network of those organizations. So it's a global multidisciplinary network of experts, because our member organizations together, I think they have the majority of all the expertise that is available in the world around assistive technology. We have it all in our member organizations, and that's the idea, is to to exploit that, to use that, to make that accessible, to find each other, to work together. Well, that's what we want to do. And in a way, it's important to understand that we think that the member organizations are still the keys. GAATO is nothing without building on the membership organizations. The fact that RESNA organizes this conference gives us the opportunity to add the kind of global perspective into that conference. And that is where we want to be. It's a non-commercial and not-for-profit organization. We have no interest in making money. Of course, the activities have to be paid somewhat, somehow, but we have no commercial interest. We have no connections with specific industry. I think that's very important. Why did we do this? Why did we think it's important to have such an alliance? That is because access to assistive technology is still a huge and global problem. It's not a problem of just a few countries. It is a problem in every country. And it's a complex problem where many factors play a role, ranging from policies to the availability of technology to innovation, research. It's all connected, and together that is a massive problem that we believe can only be achieved really when we work together and learn from each other, learn from mistakes, learn from good examples. That's why we have initiated this global alliance. I have the next. There is, of course, a history, but at this moment, we established GAATO as a legal entity, as a formalized body with the following members. You can see them on the slide. You can also find it on the website, so I'm not going to mention them all, but these are the major organizations that have decided to become a founding member of this organization. We are definitely open for any other organization that wants to join, and we are more than happy to have discussions about that. And I will come back to that a little bit later. If you are interested, or organizations you are a member of are interested to join, have a talk with us. As I said, there is a history, of course. It was not just built from scratch, because a number of these organizations that are members now already work together for about 20 years now. We started in Japan with 4 organizations deciding to do more together. But it was quite limited. It was inviting each other to each other's conferences, share some information, mention each other on our websites. That was basically it. Slowly that grew. In 2016, RESCO, the Korean Association and Treats in Taiwan, they joined the collaboration. And then in 2019, we went a step further. It was still informal. We had the International Alliance of Assistive Technology Organizations. But this year, we took a step and created GAATO as a legal entity built by the organization's members, I mentioned. I have the next. So what is it that we want to do? I already briefly explained, but the idea, the mission is that we advance the field of assistive technology and rehabilitation engineering to benefit people with disabilities of all ages. And we do that from a human rights perspective. We want to work towards the equitable and reliable access to assistive technology through knowledge exchange, research, policy advocacy, education, training, anything that helps to achieve this. And our motto on the website is that we believe in a world where all people can access the assistive technology they need. It's also important to state what Gato is not. We have reached a few emails from people that say, oh, I want to become a member. That is not the idea. It's an organization of organizations. We cannot have individual members. Individual members can become member of the member organizations and then indirectly linked to Gato. I already mentioned it, but I cannot stress it enough. We have no commercial interest. This is not a commercial organization, and it is not a political organization. Of course, we approach this field from a human rights perspective, but that we deal in knowledge, in facts, in expertise, and not in politics. So we are available and will be active anywhere on the world, irrespective the political or whatever situation. May I have next? So if you're interested, or you have an organization that was interested in getting involved, please contact us. We have a fantastic Secretary General. He is somewhere online in the audience, but we agreed not to have a double presentation. Eva-Jan Hogewerf, I'm very happy, and I think the board with me, that he is willing to spend part of his time on doing this. He has played an enormous role in getting us so far, and he is acting as our Secretary General. So, and he knows everything. If he cannot answer, well, you can try me. I'm happy to be the president at the moment, or Andrea van Hoek, the Secretary General of RESNA. She's the vice president. We have also fantastic support from Esther Dakin, who is our secretary and has played a fantastic role in developing the website together with Natasha, and of course input from others. And Inyuk Moon from Korea, who looks after the money. We don't have much money, but still, it's important. If you want to know more, go to our website. It is a pleasure to see it. Let me see. Let me tell you a little bit about why this event. As I said, we believe global collaboration and exchange of ideas is essential to be able to meet the challenge of improving access to assistive technology for everyone. No country can do that alone. No continent can do that alone. We need each other's knowledge, ideas, solutions. We thought that you can start an organization from scratch and try to become famous, but we thought it would be very efficient and good to build on existing organizations. So we thought, if one of the members organizes a conference, why not add a global perspective to that? And that's exactly what we have done in this conference. It's the first in a row, I hope. So we added this global meeting to the RESNA conference as just an additional perspective. And I think that is a good way of putting that global perspective to the foreground. And we will also initiate international projects on specific topics where we think that the individual member organizations cannot do that on their own. So RESNA was the first after our establishment, so let's do it with RESNA. And RESNA was very receptive of the idea. They were very cooperative, and I think this is a very good example of what we intend to do at other conferences as well. So anyone among you who organizes a conference, please approach us, see whether we can add maybe a presentation, maybe a special session. We can discuss that. So that's why we are doing this. And then why this topic? I think that is, basically it's an easy question, easy answer. Roger Smith will go much more into detail after me, but basically we think that we just need more evidence. In discussions that I have in the UK, in the Netherlands, with governments, with funders of healthcare, with health insurance companies, they always says, well, assistive technology, right, we don't know, it costs a lot of money and we don't know what it brings. And they're right, we don't know. The information that we have is very scattered, with very different measurement methods, very different methodologies. So if you ask what is really the evidence of what's the outcome, what's the impact of assistive technology, you have a very fragmented answer. And that's where we think we can typically do something together. So we think we need to measure outcomes and impact in a systematic way that allows comparison, sharing, accumulation of knowledge. And also we need a globally accepted framework to do so. What is a relevant outcome measure in the United States is not the same as what's relevant and important in the UK, and certainly not the same as what's relevant in a rural area in India. So we need a framework to look at these things in a systematic way, but also respecting the specific needs and circumstances in a specific setting, but then still to make it comparable and understandable. That is why we thought this is an ideal topic for this first attempt. Our colleague Roger Smith will go much more in detail about that, so I won't tell more. I hope I didn't talk nonsense. So I would like to hand over to Roger. If you have questions, responses, reactions in the meantime, please use the chat box. It's in the middle below on the screen. You find this little chat and you can post questions, make comments. I will try to look at it and then we can have a short discussion when Roger finishes. Well, thanks for now and good luck with the rest.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and good night for some of you. This is truly a global experience, and we are really, really happy that we have the representation from around the planet. So thank you for being here. We're trying to do something really innovative here, and we're launching an initiative, and we're kind of loosely calling it the Assistive Technology Outcomes and Impact Initiative of GATO, but we cannot think of any better agency, organization, or group to be doing this because of who we are. So the next slide highlights that we think there's an opportunity here for documenting global outcomes and impacts. There's a number of things, and there's just a few examples here on this slide, things that are happening nationwide and internationally and globally that are not just a small little operation, but major initiatives that are really earth-shaking. I mean, they really truly are. For example, all of you I hope know, and if you don't, we want you to know about the WHO Assistive Technology Initiative. This is not a small undertaking. When the WHO supports an initiative, this is a major process. And the leadership in WHO and all of the volunteers and the consultants around the group have done just an amazing effort to take assistive technology and raise it to the level of an initiative in the WHO. Likewise, on the other side of the planet, in China, the Belt and Road Initiative is getting not just a little bit of attention, but a lot of attention within the Chinese government as they roll this out, and assistive technology is being viewed as a major piece of this. And so these are not small initiatives, these are major ones. And then world organizations like we're ready like never before, ISPO from the Prosthetics and Orthotics, the World Federation of Occupational Therapy, and GATO. These world organizations are networking and getting together and getting ready for something that has never happened before in terms of assistive technology. And so what is this opportunity? You know, with the new programs globally, what a perfect time to create a global outcomes and impact tracking system, right? Because programs are developing throughout the planet, new programs, brand new programs, novel programs, small ones, big ones, all types of programs. Assistive technology in the next few years is going to be a whole different map than it was just a couple years ago. And so GATO has scholars and researchers and policy experts And because they're an organization of organizations, because we are an organization of organizations, we have a really unique capacity to do something that is really novel and revolutionary in terms of data collection. But if we do it now as organizations and as programs and as nations are putting together new methodologies and new data collection and new service delivery, this is the perfect time to be rolling out and discussing and talking about new ways of doing things, including data collection. So next slide. So here is the idea, and it's a big idea. In the year 2020, can we identify the 20 grand challenges of documenting outcomes and impacts for the next 20 years? There's a theme here, right? The number 20. So in the year 2020, can we identify the 20 grand challenges of documenting outcomes and impacts for the next 20 years? This would then guide the developments needed between now and 2040. This would actually sort of be a direction and a strategic plan of sorts, maybe not the details, but the general big picture in terms of what needs to happen for documenting outcomes and documenting impact. Now, we're not doing this alone. There's all types of documentation going on from all of the different agencies and all the different organizations, but GAATO has a very interesting position being connected to many, many of them, and hopefully increasingly more of them, to be able to help tie them together and help give ideas and suggestions and consultation, so we have sort of a coordinated effort. After all, we now have a global cloud. It's not little clouds that are just sort of locally based. We have a global cloud of connectedness with an opportunity to put data together across nations, across regions, and across locales. So the next slide. So these are not the right answers. These are just some examples and ideas to stimulate our thinking about, what am I talking about? Roger has another crazy idea. So should we define a minimal data set of outcomes and impact variables? Should we identify the key demographic global variables? If we're collecting data, what should be the demographics? Should we create a common terminology of assistive technology interventions? Should we list the core data collection instruments, or is this too dangerous to actually try to do? Should we develop a framework for the cloud database? If we want to have a central data collection system, what's it going to look like? Where is it going to be housed? How is it going to be administered? Should we define the access to the global database? Let's just say we have a magical database. Who gets to see it? Who gets to dive in how deep? How do you control it? How do you watch for security? Very, very big issues. Do we need to describe the user interface for accessing the central database? If we go truly global, how are we going to do this across languages? How are we going to do this so everyone, regardless of ability or disability, can get something out of this database that they need to? How do we populate the database? How do we actually get people to use it? And how do we coordinate the outcomes and impact assessment with those major initiatives of WHO in the States, NIH, the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative? And lastly, and again, there's no magic here. These are just ideas, things that have been coming out in the literature, things that have come out in conversations. Do we need to create a plan to include and build participation for lower and middle resource countries? Well, that one's probably absolutely true. And maybe all of these are, but we don't know what the right 20 major challenges are for creating a truly global outcomes and impact database. You know, what are those, and can we define those? And then maybe that can be leading us to the next piece. So the next slide. Just to back up just a half of a second, in the US, the National Science Foundation typically uses this terminology of grand challenges. And it's a list that sort of, it's even a supra high level strategic plan. It's really not a strategic plan because it doesn't get down to the how-tos, but it's sort of this potential aspirational objective. So we need to discuss questions like these to identify the 20 grand challenges for the next 20 years about assistive technology outcomes and impact. So how do we do this? Well, we actually did think about a couple tangible things we can do. One is we really need to convene a core working group of 4 to 5 of us to meet, plan, and oversee a global scan of the field. You know, what's out there? What do we need to do? But this is just sort of an organizing group, and that's a working group. The second thing is we need to run a Delphi methodology that reaches methodologists and practitioners and policymakers and people with disabilities to identify the 20 grand challenge priorities for outcomes and impact research. We need to pull this together, and we're thinking that a Delphi methodology is something that can reach globally, can really incorporate participation from all sectors and all areas. And so we're looking at putting something like that together. And so the core working group would help organize that and run that, but we want everybody to be participating within this Delphi perspective. So here's the thing, please volunteer. Now, Gato plans to identify the 20 grand challenges and AT outcomes, you know, of the next 20 years, 2020 to 2040. Now we could do this in a back room and just have a few of us do this, but we really want this to be a global process. And so one of the things that is going to happen, and where it says please volunteer, is keep your eyes open. Watch out for a survey within the next 20 days. We're trying to do everything in 20s, right? So in the next 20 days, asking for your participation. We're going to take the list of everyone who signed up for the Gato presentation and for this launch as a starting point, because we have some great representation of those of you who signed up. And so look out for the survey, and we'll see what kind of interest you have. And obviously, this is going to be a rolling expansion of individuals being involved. We'd really like to see a lot of participation throughout all sectors across the planet. Okay. So we're ready to turn the page. That was that's the big initiative, and it's very aspirational, and it's very grand, but that's what these are grand challenges. So we're looking for 20, 20, 20 over the next 20 for 20. So anyway, so we want to begin some of this discussion with our Outcomes and Impact Summit. And so here's a little preview. Now here's something very interesting is, I have the advantage of having been involved in these conversations as this was being developed from day one. I have the disadvantage of being involved in this since day one. So I get very confused of what's reality and what's imagination. So some of you may want to put in questions or clarifications or even corrections of things that are on this slide. So we have 5 Gato posters. They are viewable 24/7. And there is a live Q&A with these posters this morning for Eastern time in the US, 10 to 11:30. And that's kind of coming up next. And so there's a link here that you really can't click on because it's just your screen, right? But RESNA does have a place on their website where all of these posters are available for everybody to see. And then if you register, then you can have this Q&A opportunity with the poster authors. And then very soon, there's an international plenary presentation. Professor Mac McLaughlin, who many of you know, and if those of you who don't, you want to come and get to know him, this morning, 10:30 to 11:45, as he opens the RESNA conference with a plenary speech. And because he's very international in how he thinks, we cannot imagine that he isn't going to say something really relevant and really provoking about this whole discussion. And then just to remember that we have 6 Gato Summit paper presentations coming up tomorrow morning. So stay tuned, make sure to join the RESNA crowd, because Gato is embedded inside of the RESNA conference. And then there's another international plenary presentation tomorrow. Anthony Dutin will be presenting another perspective from the international side and view. So let's get ready to go.
Very good, Roger.
Yeah.
Thanks a lot for your stimulating words, the advertisement. Very good. There is some time for questions, and in the chat box you can already see a very interesting issue that got mentioned by 3-4 people. And that's about the 2020 idea, 20 challenges in 20 years. That's a long perspective, might make us lazy. So it's a serious question, why not 10 challenges for the next 10 years, which would align with the Sustainable Development Goals as well, run until 2030. What do you think of that, Roger?
Excellent idea. This is exactly the discussion we want to stimulate. I just, as you know, we got on a roll thinking 20s, you know, so I just kind of start perseverating on 20. So no, 10 may be perfect. And so we do need to discuss those things really early on. And maybe it's 10 years instead of 20 because we need to be thinking, doing something much more immediate. But what are the challenges that need to be done? Yes.
Is there any other question? Please feel free to use the chat box. Well, I love the idea. Have the goal to achieve 1 challenge per year. That's even a more precise approach, yeah. And it doesn't get too overwhelming. So we can identify 20 with a priority of 10, and then within those priorities, a kind of roadmap one by one. That's part of the possible discussion. That's interesting. Anyone else? Please just type a chat. Well, there's no room for really discussions, so we have to use the chat box, please.
There's a good suggestion from Dr. Gupta as well, to say, why don't we break it into 2 phases? Yeah. So first a 10 years time frame to align with the Sustainable Development Goals, and then probably another 10 years to fine tune the results.
Excellent. Anyone? Please feel free. You can also criticize the idea. You're stupid. Why?
Dr. Witte, am I audible?
Look, I have a comment.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Am I audible, Dr. Witte?
Can I go ahead?
I just wanted to suggest that can we perhaps have a Google Drive link where people can, send their comments, because maybe they are not, if they can think and suggest right now, that's fine. But we can perhaps give them 2 days time and give them a link, Google Drive link right now, where the comments can be sent. And I think that it can be then compiled, and we can reach a conclusion after 2 days. Just a suggestion for you to consider.
Yeah, it's a good suggestion, and it might be part of the invitation Roger mentioned. I think Chapal also wanted to respond.
Thank you, Luke. And it's so encouraging to see all the known faces, and Gato is now in the full swing. I liked, Roger, what you said, but also I would like to say that, this Global Challenge Fund, which originated from US, then Canada, now even there is a chapter in India Challenge Fund, China Challenge Fund. So this is a big fund with big fund pool. So what I'm trying to say, we do this, but also try to see how we can integrate 80 as a priority area in this Global Challenge Fund, because we tried to knock their door. I know Peter Singer very well, and he is now sitting in WHO. So we can connect you with Peter Singer, who is one of the founders of the Global Challenge Fund. So we have to really see that how we can mainstream 80 into this big development or big fund initiative, because we alone will be very small, and we'll never have enough resources to pursue our goal. But if we can penetrate there, we'll have a much more. So if any of you come with a focal person key idea, I can introduce with Peter Singer, pick up his brain, and try to see that how AT also can be part of the Global Challenge Fund agenda. We worked in the past, we took the lady from Global Challenge Fund to UNICEF workshop in Copenhagen a few years ago. But as we are not in US or Canada, it's very difficult for us to keep a constant touch with these groups. So it will be much, much useful if my US and Canadian colleagues really get a dialogue and establish the contacts, and because that will have much, much more potential than what we are talking here. We can act, but we need resources, and resources are there. So we have to tap that resources to make us to be more productive and more useful.
That's a fantastic suggestion. Thanks a lot. And you will help us making those connections. Thank you for that. We have to go on with the program, otherwise we create some time pressure. We have to stop exactly on time, otherwise we disturb the RESNA program. So I would like to hand over to our main speaker, someone you all know, the grande dame of the assistive technology world, Marcia Shearer, and she has been willing to give us a talk with a very interesting title. I'm not going to repeat it because I have to look it up, but it was quite challenging, and I think you will be perfectly able to explain that further. Marcia, may I give you the floor?
Thank you very much, Luke, and the warmest greetings to all of you. I do wish we could be together in person, but this, I think, is starting to work out very well. Roger and I put together this presentation, but I'll be doing most of the talking. Roger knows he can chime in at any point he wants. But Roger and I have been working on outcomes for, well, we got our first funded RERC in 2001. So we've been doing this a very long time. We prepared a 3-volume set for RESNA on outcomes. I believe it's still available. Of course, it's quite dated in many ways now, but not completely. And this presentation is based on our knowledge over what we've gained over this time frame, a presentation that was given at the GREAT collaboration a year ago, a little over a year ago, and current thinking. So I want to take up Roger's challenge to come up with grand challenges and offer some stimulation so that as you have discussions during our 2 days together, that I can give you something to keep in mind and facilitate your grand challenge thinking. I'm going to share screen. There it is. Whoops, it's not working as I want it to. There we go. All right. So there's the title, Different Strokes for Different Folks. What that means is different outcomes are valued by different stakeholders. That's part of the problem. That's part of what Luke was trying to get at in his opening remarks. We're not gathering the same data. We're not even talking, in some cases, the same language. And people want and value different kinds of information, which makes a global data set very very challenging. I just want to offer my congratulations to the formation of GATO. This is extremely exciting. It is such an opportunity for our international involvement and collaboration. It's also, by definition, because of the membership of the member organizations, interdisciplinary. That's huge. We've been talking with engineers and physicians like Luke, just in this meeting now. We have so many different disciplines represented. And we, above all, are integrative. That's what makes us stand above a lot of other efforts. We've always been collaborative and integrative. And that gives us the best possible opportunity to really succeed in coming up with these grand challenges and meeting them. I want to call your attention to an art and editorial, actually, I wrote called "It's Time for the Biopsychosocial Tech Model." It's freely accessible. There's the information at the bottom of this screen. But I come from the University of Rochester Medical Center, the home of the biopsychosocial model. George Engel was an inspiration to me. We overlap by several years there. And it's a very systems-based approach. Mac McLaughlin and I did an article on systems thinking in the AT field. And what has been missing up until now, I propose the addition of tech to biopsychosocial. Tech has become too fundamental to everyday life for it not to be given prime focus, along with the biological, psychological, and social aspects. I'd love to get your feedback on this and have you tell me if you agree or not with this, the addition of tech. Outcomes versus impact. We talk about outcomes and impact. In my mind, an outcome is a shorter term result, the consequence of an intervention, the effect of that intervention. So for example, we could focus on changes in service provision and the outcome of that on the individual's use of a technology. Now, from the actual perspective of the user, an outcome would be, now that I have my wheelchair, I can get around more independently. That's measurable. Impact, in my mind, is a less concrete, longer-term influence or effect. It's focused on a system or a societal change. For example, one might be improvements in efficiency, improvements in policy. From the perspective of the user, it might be, my wheelchair gives me a heightened sense of independence and self-reliance. Less measurable, but very important. The GATE initiative has emphasized the 5 Ps of policy, personnel, products, and provision, and their impact on people. These 5 Ps are something to guide our thinking as well on the grand challenges. And you can, each one of these has a paper about it. And you can access that at this URL at the bottom of the slide on the GAATE website. I highly encourage those of you who have not read those papers yet to do so, because they're full of a lot of great thinking as we go forward on the grand challenges. That's meant to convey how they're all interactive. They influence and can even reconstitute one another, which makes our work harder going forward. In addressing something happened to my sentence. I don't know. I didn't do a thing. I didn't change anything here. I'll try sitting back a little bit. Outcomes are highly variable depending on the stakeholders' perspectives. And they're also highly variable because of Roger's term, the variety of end goals. So they're dependent on what goes in to the process. And that, again, covers all 5 of the P's: people, product, provision, personnel, and policy. They have an important set of stakeholders with highly diverse perspectives. So for example, and Roger put these together, I think I had something to do with it, but I think Roger primarily did this. People, so we want to look at functioning. Well-being, expected and realized benefit from the use of an AT. That would be more of an impact, maybe. Characteristics of the product, you can see what those are here. Policy, regulatory requirements are met. Compliance standards are met. Provision, waiting list, turnaround time, essential specialties available, essential assessments available, qualifications of personnel, the caseload personnel carry, the resources available to them, availability of ongoing training and continuing education. Those are just some examples. And that came from the paper that was given at the great collaboration last August, freely available to download online, and there is the URL for that. I believe this presentation is going to be available later for you, so don't worry about writing down those URLs right now. Okay, here's the different folks and their different strokes. So when we look at a variety of stakeholders, ones that we typically encounter in the assistive technology field, of course we have the AT user, people. We might have a clinic director if it's a clinic. We have funding agencies and payers, insurance companies, physical therapists, occupational therapists, speech language, pathologists, rehabilitation counselors, psychologists, special educators, rehabilitation engineers, computer scientists, manufacturers, and suppliers. They have a focus on different things. Now, an AT user wants the AT to function and function well for them, be comfortable to use. These are just examples. An engineer wants that system and its components to work, to be usable. Special educators emphasize academic achievement. A clinic director focuses on efficiency and continued operation and funding. physical therapists, mobility, movement, seating, and positioning. Most of them view AT from the perspective of functional gain, but maybe something like academic as well as functional performance. Engineers might add safety, operability, and affordability. So what are their desired outcomes? From the perspective of the user, they want realization of benefit from use of that assistive technology, enhanced well-being, subjective quality of life, independence if they value that. A clinic director cares about cost containment, efficiency, user satisfaction. Funding agencies want profit, cost containment, also functional gain. They want to know they got what they paid for. Physical therapists value mobility, comfort, as well as functional gain. And so we can go down the list. Speech language pathologists, communication is the outcome for them. The final column lists sample measures. I don't want to go through that now. It is gone into more detail in the preceding paper for this presentation, but it's something to think about. Is when Roger was talking about his grand challenges and he gave us that beginning list, that was one of the things on there. What kind of outcome measures can we be using? Are they relevant everywhere or only in some places and for some people? As a rehabilitation psychologist, those of you who know me and my work, I focus on the individual. What does that AT do for that particular unique person? So that is what I'm going to focus on for the remainder of my comments. Now, those outcomes actually all emphasize enablement and the performance and activities and participation in terms of the ICF. They do vary in and weigh differently aspects of the person, environments of use, the AT, the technology itself, service delivery. It's also the case that different geographic areas, economies, and cultures emphasize some outcomes more than others because of their unique situations. This makes global data sharing and strategizing more challenging for us. It's truly a grand challenge. Thus, the identification of the most common elements of outcome measurement systems and databases will be essential to just initiate, to begin our communications and collaborations across regions, cultures, and disciplines, going back to us being an interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, integrative organization. The value of assistive technology from the perspective of that user depends on their view of the task. Is it doable and is it do-worthy? Do they want to do it? Then the product usability and use-worthiness. If it's too inconvenient and it's too much of a hassle to use, then they don't view it as being use-worthy. The value depends heavily on initial expectations of benefit, involvement in the selection of that AT, and then training in knowing how to best use it and modify it, adapt it if necessarily. And then the ultimate value comes from realizing benefit from using it. Now, here's some topics that I hope we can discuss over the next couple days. Are these universal goals for AT provision? Is this something we can agree on? If yes, what's its importance in your country? If no, what is important in your country? So to begin, a goal would be to enhance the consumer's performance of desired activities and participation in society through education, work, community involvement, and engagement. It's one thing to be involved, it's another to feel wanted and fully engaged and valued in that. Increase subjective quality of life and well-being. As a rehab psychologist, I put a lot of focus on that. Containment of costs and the use of proven evidence-based practices. And these are just a few ideas to toss out there for your consideration. How am I doing on time? I'm doing pretty good. Back to good old Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This pyramid's been around for so long, but it's very current and very valuable. So, basic needs, fundamental needs at the bottom of the pyramid are called physical needs. What we need to sustain and maintain life. Oxygen, water, food, warmth, sleep. Very, very basic and fundamental. The next layer is needs for safety and security, protection, stability. The middle level is a sense of belonging, being loved, being cared for. It's where relationships and friendships and intimacy comes in, where family comes in, feeling loved and to love, feeling accepted. This is sometimes a problem layer for people with disabilities. Then esteem needs, feeling valued, respected, having status, and then self-actualization, which is the least defined of all of these levels: morality, creativity, problem solving, self-fulfillment, acceptance. So when we get to the top of that pyramid, that self-actualization, that would be what people might call a good life. Well, what is a good life? A sense of well-being. Well, here are some things. Being calm, safe, secure, serene, healthy, and well-nourished. Okay, that's our bottom, very bottom of the pyramid, with our safety needs and our physical needs. A good life is one where we feel we have purpose, meaning. It's a rich life, interesting. Yes, up and downs, but that's the spice. That's what gives flavor to life. That's the top of the pyramid. In the middle, belongingness, feeling that one belongs versus feeling just merely tolerated. That's such an important distinction. Or worse, isolated and rejected. This is so problematic for many people with disabilities. So what's the effect of assistive technology on outcomes at the 5 levels? Well, it can try to level the playing field at the bottom, where there tends to be less individual variation. We all have needs for food. We may eat different foods, but the fundamental need for nutrition is there in all of us. But it depends on having proper trained personnel available, a good service delivery system available, and affordable products. GAATO has come up with their priority products. They, I think, pretty much all belong in those bottom two layers: security and safety. At the level of belongingness, AT can help or hinder. If it's stigmatizing, it can hinder a sense of esteem and belongingness. It can facilitate well-being. But once we get into these more subjective constructs, we're getting into more individual variation and personal factors such as mood, subjective well-being, perceptions of need, support from others, etc. So we have the best chance, perhaps, to achieve equality of outcomes at the bottom layers. Roger, would you like to add anything at this point?
I don't have any specific things to add, except to highlight the scope that you present with the focus on the person, but in the context of the particular environment, and that's social, cultural, financial, political environment, becomes so important. And so I think that encompasses that really well. And that's also the big challenge, you know, how to move forward with this in keeping in thinking. And as we kind of review the comments in the chat, really highlights some of the complexity of the challenges we have. And so, but keeping the person in the center is certainly a really important thing to do.
Thank you, Roger. I think we can open this up to all of us now.
Yes, please. Thanks a lot, Marcia and Roger, for this presentation. You clearly demonstrate the complexity and the importance of the topic. So there's a lot of work to be done, and some people in the chat have even made it more complicated because they added perspectives and relevant points. Is there anyone, please use the chat for that, otherwise it becomes a bit messy. Please use the chat if you have specific questions for Marcia and Roger, or comments, whatever. And anyone. And maybe you can stop sharing your screen, Marcia, then we can see more of us again. Yes, fantastic. Thanks. Anyone, please feel free to ask a question or raise your hand, and just if you nobody, that's, I can't imagine that.
Yeah, Dr. Witte, can I come in?
Yes, please go ahead, Dr. Carr.
Yeah, so I have also mentioned in my comments on that link that you have shared with us that I think a lot is happening in the field of assistive technology. It's not that, you know, it's only that we are working in isolated spots, and we have not been perhaps sharing enough. So my suggestion is only that if we can share the projects, the methodology, the process, and also the, you know, the outcomes, the impact. So those learnings will definitely help us, you know, in shaping the projects in the new places, or even modify the ongoing projects. So that's very important, because we understand this is a global association, and we need to learn from that. So just for your information, sir.
Yeah, exactly. You're right. We don't share enough, and we don't know enough about what other organizations do. And there is even a tendency sometimes when a topic like assistive technology becomes more important, that new organizations are established and they start in a way from scratch. And that's exactly why we have initiated GAATO to be at least an umbrella under which we can connect more easily and more effectively. Any other contribution, response?
Okay, I have a question in mind. Can I ask that?
Yes, you may, of course.
Right, thank you. I was just thinking, like, if a particular association, a particular organization wants to initiate a particular project, can there be an opportunity from Resna that he can share the concept note and then receive inputs to make that better, plus minus the documents from the previous similar interventions? So I'm sure that will help in making it to the best of efficacy and best of efficiency. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I think, well, our policy is that we will share as much as possible because we are an open network, no secrets, because we are about sharing. So we'll give that some thought on how to do that in the best possible way. There was one question on the chat. Does Marcia have a comment on Lloyd Walker's comment above? That may funders now must look for higher order outcomes. That is, let me have a look at where is that comment?
Let me read this comment. Yeah, I can't.
I can read it aloud. It says funding agencies and payers, particularly governments, will also look to things like social and economic participation, reduced care costs, a more cohesive society. That is Lloyd Walker's comment.
Yes, and that kind of is in line with what Renzo said about his belief that impact is something at the societal level more. Well, that can be true. That's what I meant about it being broader based. I focus on the individual. That's not to exclude a focus on anything else. But yes, impacts tend to be longer term, broad, and that makes them challenging to measure. Is that better, Renzo?
Renzo looks satisfied.
Thumbs up or down?
Yes, I'm satisfied.
Okay, great. We are reaching the end of this session, another 5 minutes. So if there is one urgent comment to be made, we can allow that. There is some new voice. We will keep all the messages in the chat. So we can work with that in the near future, and it will be part of our reporting, I think.
Luke, if I may, I want to give two shout outs. I want to give a shout out to Linda Alcesser. She's going to be having a presentation on shared vocabulary. I think this is going to be very important as we go forward. That would be a grand challenge right there. And my colleagues at the University of Rochester Medical Center, Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation, have established the Integrative Cognitive Rehabilitation Program. It's a wonderful example of how many disciplines are working together and collaborating for the outcome of improved functioning for people with brain injuries. So please give thought to attending that as well.
Well, thanks. I think we have to close this session, but before doing so, I would like to thank Marcia and Roger for the lots of content they've presented us. And but also the people on the back, of course. The collaboration with RESNA is quite unique and very effective. So thanks, RESNA, for that. Roger has played not only today, but also in the running up to this event, a huge role in putting all the papers together and preparing I call it the proceedings that you will be able to find on the website and yeah, directly after this session. So thanks, Roger, for that. It was really fantastic to do that. Other people involved, Esther Dakin, Takenobu, Eva John, and all those I forget as well. Natasha, for all the support. She has been absolutely fantastic in managing all this and is extremely precise. She pinpointed several mistakes I have made and always corrects them in time. That's fantastic. And thank you all for attending. For me, this tastes like more. I think this is exactly what we intended to do, bring really people from very different perspectives together on topics that, yeah, that are relevant to all of us. And I hope you'll find the same and you will stay with us. I hope many of you will respond to the invitation you will receive within 20 days from Roger about the 10 challenges for the next 10 years and the 1 challenge for the next 1 year. So I hope to see you all again, and I hope you will switch on from this session now to the RESNA session. And as we said before, you have to get out of this Zoom environment, and then you go into the RESNA environment. The sheet you see now presents how that can be done. You have always also received, those who registered at least, have received a mail just 10 minutes ago from the RESNA organization with all the information again. So it's very easy. I hope to see many of you in a few minutes in another Zoom environment, but about the same topics. Thank you all. And let's make this a first attempt in a long series of successful events.
Thank you, Luke. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
You guys, thank you. Yeah, thank you, Roger, Marcia, all of you.